Catherine Carlisle, the Decorative Arts Trust Manager of Educational Programs, and I'm delighted to share with you today a special lecture from Dr. Ulrich Leben. Dr. Leben's lecture will take us through many of the important historical sites in Bavaria, German southeastern state. Dr. Leben has published many books and articles on furniture and decorative arts in Europe, particularly France and Germany. He's a curator of the collections of historic furniture of the residence of the German ambassador in Paris. He's worked for many years as associate curator for the Rothschild Collection at Waddesdon Manor in the UK, and he's been a guest professor at the Bard Graduate Center and at Parsons, the New School. In this presentation, Dr. Leben will provide a visual introduction to the major sites that we will see on the Trust 2022 study trip abroad to Bavaria. We are grateful for the support of the James Sanders Educational Programs Fund, which supplies the resources needed to create such virtual programs and allows our entire digital audience to come along with us as we travel and explore the world's decorative arts and architectural wonders. I now present Dr. Ulrich Leben.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm delighted to give you an introductory lecture for your upcoming trip to Bavaria in southern Germany. And I will share with you some of the views of the wonderful sites you're visiting and which are part of an amazing trip, which will be a very, very great experience. And I'm very grateful to got this preparation for this lecture and that Catherine and Meth trusted me to prepare this for you. So I hope you will enjoy my presentation. The Munich residence at the north end of the city and today in the heart of downtown Munich is still the center of attraction in town. It covers the period from the Renaissance to the 19th century and hosts amazing collections of art. Munich is also a city of ecclesiastic monuments, and I show you here the Theatiner Church just opposite of the residence and the worldly Feldherrnhalle based on the loggia of the Medici in Florence. The Church of Our Lady is the main church of medieval Munich, and you're going to see this on your visit in downtown. The residence itself covers architecture from the Renaissance to the neoclassical period. The Renaissance wing is adjacent by neo-Renaissance wing by Klenze, inspired by the Palazzo Pitti in Florence directly. The antiquarium inside of the residence is hosts the collection of antique sculpture in a festival hall constructed in order to display that collection of antiquities. The Rococo additions to the residence are of absolute wonderful quality. They were made by François Cuvillier, a French-trained artist who, after having done his studies in Paris, did a lot of wonderful creations of Bavarian Rococo in Munich. Here it's the Green Gallery in the residence. The neoclassical interiors of the Klenze wing are inspired directly by French Empire style. Klenze had studied in Paris with the architects Percy and Fontaine. The close connection with the French Empire based on the fact that Bavaria allied with Napoleon, who made the Bavarian Duke a king. The Cuvillier Theater is a gem of Bavarian Rococo with all its original paneling and still a theater in working order, which was reconstructed and restored to work as a theater after destruction in World War II. The Bavarian National Museum, founded in 1855, and is housed in a purposely built building, which is composed with copies of elements of most famous Bavarian buildings, historic Bavarian buildings. Its collection holds holdings of very great variety. One of the most important one is the only, since very short time, put on display collection of carved ivory, which is unique in its kind and covers objects from the Renaissance to Neoclassicism. But there are also very important collections of Nymphenburg porcelain made in Munich with the Commedia dell'arte group, silver plate from the royal court, and furniture by the Röntgen workshop, tapestries, etc., etc. Some periods room are also in the Bavarian National Museum, and I just show you one from a former palace in Munich, which was destroyed in World War II, but which shows very delicate painted panels on silk. Back to the center of town, you will visit the Asam Church, which was built by the Asam brothers between 1733 and 46, and is really the peak of Munich Rococo in a very theatrical setting. The Ludwigstraße, built by King Ludwig I as a northern extension of the city, it houses former mansions today, are used by ministries and, of course, the university. In the background, you see the Ludwig Church, which was part of the urban development of Ludwigstraße, and the Triumphal Arch, which leads to the city part of Schwabing. The Bavarian National Theatre and Opera at Max-Joseph-Platz was built by the architect Ludwig Schwanthal in 1840 and is still operating as the National Opera and Theatre. The Königsplatz shows the archaeological museums and the propylene gateway built by Leo von Klenze, one of the most important urban developments during the early 19th century. Within the city of Munich, there is, of course, the English Garden, but also the wonderful place of the Wiesen, which is the big meadow, site of the annual worldwide known Oktoberfest. For the later 19th century and early 20th century, you will visit some very amazing places. One of them is the artist home of Villa Stuck, which was built by Franz Stuck between 1897 and 98, and is today very well restored museum for the artist's work in the historic rooms, which were decorated by him and preserved in a very, very nice way. And the former workshop and atelier has been transformed in an exhibition hall, which is used for changing contemporary exhibitions. Another famous artist's home is Lenbach House, home of the painter Franz von Lenbach, in the style of a Florentine villa, built in neo-Renaissance style 1887 to 1891. And today it's a museum of art of the city of Munich with an outstanding collection of German modern art, with a new wing for the presentation of the important collections Expressionism, artists of the Blue Rider like Franz Marc, August Macke, Gabriele Münter, and Wassily Kandinsky, a delight for heart and soul. The immediate surrounding of the villa has preserved the original garden, which was made for the artists. And on the top level, you see a picture of the new wing, which mainly houses the art collection, which a great variety of fantastic art, which is too long to describe in detail, but you will enjoy on your visit. The immediate surrounding of Munich houses the summer palace and residences of the Bavarian dukes. One of them is Nymphenburg Palace with its garden and the summer pavilions. I show you two external views from the courtyard and from the garden side of that very big Italianate palace built by the architect Enrico Zuccalli. The center of the big center of the central pavilion is a great hall, which covers a hall from the ground floor to the ceiling, with amazing plaster and painted decorations. The historic apartments and the beauty gallery of King Ludwig I, who collected portraits of the most beautiful women of Munich and favorites of the king. But there are also many other original installations like the parade beds, French furniture, and fantastic portraits of the Dukes of Bavaria. The special part in the park is a quantity or a certain number of amazing pleasure pavilions, which were preserved in a miraculous way. And one of them is the Amalienburg, which was a hunting pavilion. They could go onto the top of the pavilion and shoot from there, which of course today is more used as a museum place. But the interior houses the most amazing central hall with a silvered Rococo decoration designed by François Cuvillier, and which is preserved in the most amazing way. It's perhaps remarkable that with the French connection, Cuvillier was able to bring the mirrors, which were transported from Paris as single sheets of glass and then assembled to big panels only in Munich, because the Munich glass makers were not able to make such big panels of glass. Another of those pavilions is the amazing Badenburg, which actually was a summer pavilion with a swimming pool with Delft tiles, which is still preserved as it was in the 18th century. Another pavilion is the Pagodenburg, which was built for taking tea and refreshments in the afternoon. And this is actually built in a kind of Chinese style with lacquered walls and lacquer panels, which partly were imported from Asia. Another palace which you're going to visit on your trip is Schleißheim Palace, which is divided into 3 units. On the top screen, you see the old palace from the Renaissance, and opposite the new palace, which was built by Joseph Effner, and is the main attraction today. The interior has an incredible staircase which covers the whole height of the building, with an incredible plaster decoration and fresco painted, which are unique on your trip. The 2 galleries, left and right of the central staircase, develop as picture galleries with painted ceilings and stucco decoration, and hold important collections of French and Italian painting, which belong to the Duke of Bavaria. And this alongside with the official state apartment with state beds and French furniture reinstated in the way as there would have been in the 18th century. On the top screen, you see a view from the garden side of the big palace, and then you turn down the canal and you develop a view to the wonderful Lustheim Palace, which was a hunting pavilion at the time and is today housing one of the most amazing china collections from Meissen porcelain, which is on a very modern and very nice display and delightful to visit. This collection is one of the best Meissen collections to be found in Germany. One of your next stations on this amazing trip will be the city of Augsburg. Augsburg is known for the production of great cabinets in ebony and silver furniture. Lots of this has been exported, so there's little left at the place itself. But Augsburg houses some amazing historic buildings, and it's also the home of the fantastic banker house of the Fugger, who was the banker of the emperor. And you can still see their main premises, which are existing and have been restored very nicely. And there's also Fugger City, which is a whole area where the Fugger employees lived and the Fugger family, and where you can visit parts as they were at the time of the Renaissance. And I give you just some images which give you an impression of the size and scale of the building from that period, which are preserved. A wonderful building which illustrates the wealth of the Augsburg bourgeoisie also in the 18th century, is the ballroom at the Schätzlein Palace, which gives you an idea of the former wealth and the splendor of the town, actually dwelling into Italian fresco painting and French style Rococo decorations for those plasterworks. When you leave Munich, you will have a chance to really capture a view of amazing landscapes, which are not only like known on postcards and from kitschy movies, but it's really breathtaking to see the pre-Alp countryside, which is still used as ancestral farmland with those wonderful views on the Alp mountains. And you will be very pleased to discover in this absolutely unique setting the fantastic Wieskirch at Steingaden with an interior decoration in the highest Rococo style of the late 1740s by the Zimmermann brothers, two brothers who were specialized in conceiving these outrageously fantastic and completely over-the-top Rococo decoration. Once you have seen this, you have seen the best of Bavarian Rococo, which exists in the south of Bavaria. It's really absolutely amazing and fantastic what they locally produce and were able to do thanks to the wealth of the ecclesiastic orders and in towns. Also moving into the pre-Alps, you will be very lucky to discover Linderhof Palace, built by Ludwig II, the fancy fairy tale king. And he had a number of palaces which he had built only for his own pleasure. And Linderhof is one of the most delicate ones, completely in neo-Rococo French style, all on the highest level made for the personal use of the solitary living king in the very dramatic setting of the Alp mountains. And he was buying things constantly in Paris. He had an embroidery workshop who worked only for him, with two sisters who were constantly making these amazing tapestries and bed hangings and throne hangings, and everything is from the period and very, very nicely preserved and presented in the most enchanting way in this fantastic setting of the pre-Alps. Continuing and leaving the southern Bavaria area, one of the first stations you will to go is to Landshut city and Burg Trausnitz. Landshut is still very nicely preserved medieval town, which has kept its main street with beautiful idyllic buildings. And then just outside of town is Trausnitz, Trausnitzburg, which is really like a burg as one imagines from the Renaissance and from the medieval period. And the main attraction there is the Italianate courtyard with its arcades and lodges and frescoes from the Renaissance, of which some survived, and you would see, and they're absolutely worth seeing it. And this castle had a big fire in the 1960s and was very well restored, and you will see the maximum of what has preserved from this destructive fire. One of the next stations on your trip will be the city of Bamberg, which is further north in Franconia, and the most picturesque sites, one of the most picturesque sites in Germany, and very much well preserved in every detail. So it was the seat of the bishop, which had its important church and also the bishop's palace. And the interiors of the Baroque palace are made by artists from Italy and from Austria. And there is a very strong Italianate influence, as we can find in Vienna and, of course, in northern Italy. It mixes amazing plasterwork with fresco in the most amazing way, with chandeliers from the later 18th century and furniture and hangings, which often were imported from Paris and can be documented back to Paris. So it's a fantastic suite of rooms. You can visit the private apartments of the Archbishop, and you will see marvels which have been preserved in most wonderful state of conservation. But also you should enjoy Bamberg as a site for a visit, which will give you very picturesque views of that very precious artistic legacy from the past. Continuing in Franconia, one of the main spots and the main cities is, of course, Nuremberg. Nuremberg city, on the top image, you see a picture of the town as it is today. The lower picture, I had to show it, it was Nuremberg before the destructions in World War II. It was one of the most perfectly preserved medieval towns, has been very much destroyed in World War II, but then was lovingly reconstructed. And there are still many fantastic buildings, such as the St. Lawrence Church, and also the building which was home of the Dürer House, was home of Albrecht Dürer, the famous Renaissance painter from Germany. And you can understand here very well, you see the house in timber frame, which has been lovingly restored. And the house next door obviously has been rebuilt just in a more discreet, modern way. Within Nuremberg, the German National Museum is one of the strongholds of art from Germany. It has incredible collections of all kinds of media, sculpture, paintings, decorative arts, but also technical inventions and period rooms from different parts of Germany, and certainly worth a visit once you are in Nuremberg. So Nuremberg downtown is probably worth a walk. You will come in a very nice season when you will be able to still walk around and discover this very picturesque and one of the most important towns for Renaissance in Germany. Moving on to the countryside again, you will see Bayreuth. Bayreuth, which was the very nicely residence of Wilhelmine from Brandenburg-Bayreuth. She was a younger sister of Frederick II, the Prussian king, and was married off to the local prince. And they had several residences, and the countess herself was very active in bringing artists to Bayreuth. So there was a number of palaces constructed under her patronship. And even so, you know today Bayreuth mainly for the Wagner Festival, which is happening there every month of August. We have to take into account that that's actually an 18th century residence with lots of amazing places, such as the Hermitage, and also the Italian Schloss. And all these palaces have kept their interiors, was never destroyed, have always been preserved. And there are some interiors in the Chinese style which are particularly interesting because they were made for the Prussian princess Wilhelmina. And she was not very happy in her marriage and amused herself by having artists designing rooms and interior schemes after her personal design. We have these incredible wall panels covered with mirror glass and fragments from lard stone, from soapstone from China. And she also contracted very important cabinet makers who worked for her, like here in the Palm Room. And what is very interesting for her is that she died at a very untimely young age. And when she had passed away, Frederick II ordered many of the artists who worked for her in Bayreuth and brought them to Berlin, so that they actually knew a continuous career in Potsdam and the Berlin residence, which is in the historic context of German history, a very interesting fact. The Opera House in Bayreuth, the Baroque Opera House was made for Markgräfin Wilhelmina after Italianate models, and it's still an operating opera house which is played in regularly, and one of the marvels of the trip you're going to see. Another archbishop, who elector bishop who lived in Franconia, is elector bishop of family of Schönborn, who built Schloss Weißenstein in Pommersfelden, which is somewhere in the middle of nowhere in Franconia. You find this amazing Baroque palace with the main building and the communes and stable buildings around. A very nice complex, still owned privately by the Schönborn family. The impressive outside building is really of size which is worth of a big city and but it's very interesting to find this out in the countryside. The building is adorned with a building sculpture of a monumental size, the stable building as well as the main building. Different views from the garden side. There's a very rustic meadow in the background today, which has been like no special garden, but it's in the middle of the country, so that can be explained. The main building with the colossal order houses the main staircase. On the basement, you have a grotto room, which is well preserved as it was in the 18th century, a room which was used for refreshing in the summer and for meals in the summer. And then there is a suite of rooms which are completely preserved as the private bedrooms of the bishop, and also dining rooms which housed a very important painting collection of Italian paintings, which was assembled by the family of Schönborn and is still owned privately. One of the highlights of the visit is the cabinet. The fantastic marquetry work here was done by the cabinet maker Plitzner, who was specialized in doing this very elaborate work. And there are, next to the floor, which is done completely in marquetry, you also have the walls set with little consoles on which a china collection is displayed, and then big mirrors, which create a kind of mirage effect of the most wonderful kind. One of the highlights of an interior scheme, completely preserved and still enjoyable to the present day. Now, after your visit in Pommersfelden, you will continue further west and you will come to Würzburg, which has another residence, which is built for the Elector Bishop Johann Philipp Franz von Schönborn, again, a elector bishop who had incredible means and who had the architect Balthasar Neumann building him a palace, and had it painted for both the Italian painter Tiepolo, who came and did the staircase. Again, the main block of the building is taken by a gigantic hall, which covers 3 storages and goes from the bottom to the top. And on the top, you have this wonderful fresco, which has survived World War II by miracle. And of course, is in a wonderful state of conservation. One of the main attractions of the Würzburg Palace. Once you're up there, you will visit a suite of rooms, and one of those rooms which were restored completely from scratch with fragments which had survived the bombings of World War II is the mirror room, which was opened only some years ago and could be recreated due to old photographs and fragments in the most amazing way. But it shows you again the highest Franconia Rococo as you would find it in northern Bavaria, and it's absolutely unique to German style and of that period. It's a little bit stronger and really pushed to the extreme than you would find it in French architecture and French interiors, but it's really showing a very strong French influence. Not far from Würzburg, you will visit Veitshöchstheim, which is a Baroque garden built for the Elector Bishop of Würzburg as a pleasure summer garden. This was started at the early 18th century and continued the creation over several generations of elector bishops. And at some point, the plan was slightly changed from taking the focus away from the palace, which you see on the lower screen, to actually the garden. I show you the old garden plan, which shows you a very formal garden, and you see that on the picture on the top left. It's still preserved like this with hedges and little themes within every little garden. This garden was very much decorated with sculptures, such as these. I show you here by Ferdinand Tietz, and a sculpture who is called Plitzner. And it was heavily damaged in the last days of World War II. and is being reconstructed in recent years so that it will still give you a very good impression of this incredible sandstone sculpture, which originally you have to imagine painted and gilded, and the restoration was done in a very careful way in order to preserve a maximum of what was there before and recreate also the scheme of the garden. But of course, lots of it had been lost due to the destructions in World War II. One of the last sites on your visit is Ludwigsburg Palace near Stuttgart, originally built as a summer palace and residence for the Duke of Württemberg, and sometimes used also as a main residence by the Duke, who wanted to escape Stuttgart and lived in in his country residence some 15 miles out of Stuttgart. This palace is very important today, but it has been completely preserved with a very rich interior decoration covering the Baroque period up to Classicism. The interiors are rich. I hope you will see a maximum of those galleries and period rooms with original painting collections, fresco decorations, a throne room, you name it, it's all preserved and has been kept in a very, very careful and very nice way. Again, we find a mix of Italianate sculpture work, which was introduced into southern Germany, and also some very nice lacquer and mirror rooms. The room shows the whole evolution of style and of fashion from the 18th century, and in a very high and much too less known, the place would merit to be known much more. And you're very happy and lucky to go there and to see this incredibly well-preserved palace. So that covers the 18th and also 19th century. There are some late 18th century rooms in a very pristine neoclassical style, as you see on the left-hand screen, with amazing furniture by the Röntgen workshop. But there are also rooms from the early 19th century which have kept their original textile fittings, which are pretty rare to be found in such an extension. And of course, there's also the neoclassical ballroom with its monumental chandeliers, which is still in situ. And you will finish your trip in the fantastic Stuttgart Weissenhof estate, which really presents the best Bauhaus line. The Weissenhof estate was built as a competition of 21 model homes built in modern style under the direction of Mies van der Rohe, with the participation of a number of international modernist architects such as Le Corbusier and Walter Gropius. The Weissenhof estate has now been very carefully restored and is one of the highlights to study international style and Bauhaus in Germany. And I think you will have a wonderful link from the lots of wonderful historic estates and castles you have visited to see that fantastic manifestation of modernism in its best style in Stuttgart city. I thank you very much for your attention, and my best wishes for an enjoyable trip to Bavaria and southern Germany. Thank you very much.